boat party. That was amazing. I could sit and talk to you all night and tomorrow too. So I'm going to open the floor up to Carlos if you have any questions.
And I would love to hear about, well, a summary of the book that you've written and what its purpose is and its name, please.
For sure. So I don't know if everyone can hear. She asked if I could just share a summary of my book, what was kind of the meaning behind it, and then what was the purpose of writing it, which is a great question. So I'll start with the purpose. The reason why I wrote this book was when I was in Hawaii in 2017, I saw how people were mistreating the animal when I was on the beach. And what came to me when I saw this huge crowd crowding around the sea turtles, people weren't respecting the animals' space. I thought, you know what, I think people might actually pick up an art book and then I could fool them and they could learn a little bit about the animal. And this is a way of reaching maybe those people who typically wouldn't pick up a sea turtle scientific book, but it's possible I could reach a few of those people. So it kind of started down a couple different paths. At the beginning of my book, I share the scientific facts of the animal. I talk about the different sea turtles that I paint. I talk about their importance in the painting process. I share a little bit about what I look for as an artist in the animal. And I share some of the dialogue I've had with the marine biologists that I've talked to. So I have connected with specialists with leatherbacks, loggerheads, and green sea turtles. Because of that, what's amazing is they knew my work before we had met because they saw what I had done. So my reputation exceeded me, so you never know who's actually paying attention to you, right? The first part of the book shares a little bit about that and the journeys and where I got my images from. So my family generally goes to sea turtle locations, whether it is an aquarium. My kids used to think, here we are, Mom, we're going to see some animal summer again. The most amazing experience I had with the sea turtle was we were in California, we went to Scripps, which is an aquarium down there. And there was a whole bunch of ladies piled around this loggerhead. He had been injured, and so they couldn't re-release him. So he's in captivity for the rest of his life. And they couldn't get him to move. He wouldn't leave the bottom of the water. And they were so upset. I walked up, and that turtle chased me wherever I walked. And I started kind of almost doing like running back and forth, and he was chasing me with it. And those women were so upset because I got that animal to move. So I share stories like that. So my experiences with the animals. The last part of the book is actually about the messages that I share with each of the pieces to increase hope, awareness for oneself and the world, the oceans, Earth.
When was it published?
It was published actually in 2019.
By?
I self-published it. Yeah, it's a self-published book.
Do you have it in bookstores now?
It is in a few of the Indigos. Yeah, it was in quite a few of the bookstores, and I ended up just pulling them because I found I sold more than the bookstores did. Yeah, yeah, and the thing is actually what's interesting is about the bookstores themselves is a lot of the books that are in there are actually owned by the artists, and so when they get lifted, it's actually from me, it's not from the bookstore themselves, so I kind of like taking control of that a little bit.
More questions?
Are you planning another trip?
Not actually for a while. So we were in Hawaii in November, and we had a big year last year because pre-COVID we were supposed to go to actually Ireland and Hawaii, but we had to cancel all our trips like everybody else. So we used up all of our flight credits this past year, and this next year to the next couple of years we're staying low, a little bit close to home. Plus with me taking on extra studies, I don't want to travel as much because I got a lot going. So the next place will probably be England or London, so I can actually go get a hoodie from where I'm going to school. So.
Is there no marine wildlife like on the coast of Canada that you could get in touch with, like any?
Yeah, so I work with
Yeah.
Canadian Sea Turtle Network, which is on the east coast of Canada. Canadian sea turtles are actually leatherbacks, and they never come ashore.
Oh, okay.
So they are only in the water. The only sea turtles that actually come up to shore to sun are the green sea turtles. They will get sometimes caught in the undercurrents or the warm currents and end up in our waters, but then they end up with basically, in human language, is hypothermia, which is why Skuna in the Vancouver Aquarium is there. So that's how she ended up there. So Skuna got caught up and she was found, I think it was called Schooner's Cove, by some fishermen. The aquarium went in and they kind of nursed her back to health because she was basically hypothermia. They had to feed her abnormal diet, which is why they can't re-release her, because she found a taste for the food that they fed her to try and get her back. The cool thing about the green sea turtles is midlife, at age 25, they change their diet. They go from omnivores to vegetarians. So they're the only sea turtle that switches their diet, and that's at age of reproduction. So until about 25 to 30, scientists don't know what sex or gender the animal is. And what they find is, in Hawaii, I found out that they actually draw blood from them, and they find out through a blood analysis what the gender is, because it's the length of the tail that tells you whether or not it's a female or male. That's the only identifier. Yeah, so, but with Canadians, so I do try and work as much as I can. We get loggerheads also along our coastlines, but it's all on the east coast, and again, they don't come ashore. They don't come
That's
ashore.
another type of turtle?
Sorry?
That's another type of
Yeah, so we have, in Canadian waters, we have loggerheads. They eat crustaceans, they're in murky water. That's their diet. And actually, you can tell which ones feed the most because they actually get suntanned, so they go more orangey color the more that they're at the surface of the water. So the one I have in the show here, he's quite pale because that was the one that was in the aquarium. He's never seen the sun. And then we have leatherbacks. They are in the Pacific Ocean. They're very, very rare, almost extinct. So the Pacific leatherbacks are very rare to see, whereas in the Atlantic, they're quite prolific. And the Canadian Sea Turtle Network is the first one ever to tag a male leatherback. So that's how they could start to track them to find out where their mating grounds were and all of that information. So sea turtles are fascinating, but they're all so different. But the only ones we see on land from Mexico or Hawaii is the green sea turtle, unless it's the females coming up to nest. But males for the other species never, ever, ever come to shore, except for the green.
Huh.
Any more questions?
I'd just like to ask Caroline,
Okay.
this picture, that is amazing. I'm just looking at the picture and the clarity and the emotion. How long did it take you to do this picture and, really go into the depths of what you put together?
So that's always a really hard question to answer because I never ever kind of clock it. I started that piece in December and I finished it this week. So it gives you a bit of time. Doesn't mean that I painted the entire time. I paint in really thin layers. So I've been actually told that I paint like an oilist, but I paint with acrylic. So it's a lot of washes to get my backgrounds in. So they take a long time to dry. It took me a while. I've never painted a painting like that, so that one actually was quite a bit of challenge because I had to allow my brain to accept the blurry one in the background because I've never done that before. And when I sit down though, I will paint in 1 to 2 hour increments and then I get up and do something else and then I go back to the piece. Because what I found was that break, you almost re-see the painting again. And sometimes where you thought you were failing, you come back and you realize you were succeeding, and other times you think you're succeeding, you come back and you have to repaint it all. So it gives you that kind of moment to reassess where you're going. With these, I work from photograph, and then I will pull it up on my computer and zoom into the animal to get the fine stuff.
Detail is amazing.
Yeah. Diane?
I'm awfully interested in all the write-ups you have with every painting, and I really connect, as you know, because we're both artists together. And there's so much feeling and spirituality in every single one of your paintings, and I can see where your emotions have come through the connection. And it's just amazing to realize, and I know myself, I didn't realize I was doing that, so I really relate to what you're saying. Because I put a painting on Facebook, and a fellow, I told Elizabeth, wrote me back, and he said he saw 5 faces in my waterfall. And I said, really? So I went back, and he said, it tells me you're a very spiritual person, which I am, but I was blown away and never noticed that. And now, like Elizabeth can even find animals that I subconsciously painted within something. But I was going around reading all the write-up about each painting, and there was and the title. There's so much spirituality in that, and I'm sure you benefited from every brush stroke.
Definitely. So with each of the pieces, the title and the message is almost what I'm processing while I'm going through that. The title for the piece comes through the painting.
Yes.
So it's not designed ahead
Not
of time. It is a flow process, it's a creative process. The funny thing is for my schooling, I had to do a strengths test. So I end up with this program, the master's I'm taking is I will use a lot of testing to identify people's strengths, and we help build people up because it's positive psychology. It's about the studying of well-being and happiness, actually, is what I get to study, which is beautiful because it's the higher side of life. I had to do a strengths test. So I did it once, and it was pretty accurate. And I thought, you know what though? I did a lot of like neutral responses. I should go back and redo the test, but force myself not to be neutral on everything so that I can get a more accurate read. On both of them, number 1 was spirituality for me. So that is ultimately my first filter in everything that I experience. And what was interesting was doing that test twice. Was that my top 6 strengths were the exact same. They were just slightly altered. What changed was my lower strengths actually shifted quite a bit. So by being more true to my answers itself. I used to hide my spirituality actually quite a bit because society is really questionable. In the art industry, I'm like, all of us are spiritual. It's great. We all see into stuff. We all really work into it. But it took a lot of courage to start to share how I saw the world, right? So and actually it was after my mom, I got a specialization in supporting highly sensitive people, which is coming up in psychology quite a bit, because they make up 15% of the population. And it's how your brain is actually wired, and it's how your brain is formed, and I am one as well. So who better to support people
Well, it shows
with
so
that?
much in your paintings.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Hi, yeah, I was just wondering, so with like the spirituality stuff, and I'm just wondering, like, when you're doing more of like the scientific kind of stuff you're doing, how do you go about working with things that are a little more technical and they're like science-based, and I don't know, is it Akashic records that you do, or?
Yeah, so I've been trained in the Akashic records, and what I love doing is finding the science behind the spirituality. So a lot of the stuff, what I do is I try and bring the science in. So if you actually really look at a lot of what psychology does, it's almost very, very similar to what's done in the holistics. It's just called something else. It's nomenclature. That's all it is. And so Akashic records is interesting. I actually took that course more for myself. My mom had only been passed for 6 months, and I found that it was almost like that connection with the realm you can't see, right? So it's like you just lost someone, and that's a really good way to feel you're still connected to someone who's no longer physically here. I was blessed because my girlfriend is a teacher and highly trained in that aspect. So the Akashic Records itself, for those who don't know what that is, each one of us, they say, has records of our entire life and that you can access them anytime. A lot of times with Akashic Records, what's interesting is they are accessed through multiple different modalities. So journeying is a way of almost accessing the same information through shamanic type studies. Meditation, you can do the same. And the Akashic Records itself, I guess in some ways, so my girlfriend who I trained underneath, she would say that I paint in the Akashic Records all the time. So for me, it's not a conscious working with the records, but I do know people who do that, for sure. But I love finding science to prove the stuff a lot of people says.
Yeah, I didn't know there was any science proof to it. I just
If you start looking, actually, so I just finished a program where I audited through a university down in the U.S., and it was a anthropological look at shamanism, spirituality, and it's actually referenced quite a bit. So it depends on what science